Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat Shalom. This summer, as many of you know, while I was away, I went to France. Our family was supposed to be in Israel, but the situation was too unpredictable to spend an extended period of time there, a whole summer. And so we ended up going to France, to the little village in the Pyrenees where I partly grew up. And in those first days and weeks, I had this really unexpected feeling and sense that I was coming to a home. I saw some of these older villagers, or at least they were older now. They weren't that old when I was growing up. And they were excited to see me and to meet my family. And they came and hugged me and greeted me and asked me how everything was going. And it was like I was a long lost son coming back to where I'd grown up. And so much of the place had changed, and there were a lot of young families now. And when I grew up there, after moving there from Jerusalem, I remember arriving, and a lot of the people were still driving horse carts, and they were real salt of the earth, French, Catalan villagers. And you couldn't always tell where the earth began and the person went on. They're really one of the place, the mountain, the air, the whole thing. So the village had changed, and meeting these young families, were all proud of their mayor who was shaking things up and bringing new life to this little village. And the new families, when they heard I grew up there, and they were like, oh wow, you've gone all around the world and now you've come back to show your family this place and to show your children what it was like. And then over the few days I was there and the weeks, it was really interesting to hear, as what happens when you haven't been in a place for a long time, what had happened to all the people you used to know. And you hear the stories, and some people, peers, what they've been through and very bad life situations, difficult times, others who did well. And new life, old life, same everywhere, wherever you go, really. So our parsha this week, Ki tetzeh lemilchama, when you go out to war. And philosophically, the commentators understand it to mean when you leave the boundaries of your own land and you go out. And it's really metaphorically about all of us, because we all go out on our journeys, even if we live in the very same town where we grow up. Whatever area of life that opens up possibilities, or just when we go out trying to seek out new vistas and explore new areas, discovering new areas of life, or finding new love or new resilience, different parts of our life. And then we come back home, and we come back to a home, a place where we come to bring together the different parts of ourself. And our home, according to our tradition, is not always the place where we grew up in. And so for the rabbis, and because of our wanderings, the Talmud says, oh, where's your home? Your spouse is your home. That's where your home is, your bait. Your spouse is your bait. And so the life you build over decades with a person, over years, and the family you start with them, that's where your house is. That's where you come back and go forward from all your journeys and wars. That's a space of comfort, right? A space that you sanctify through love and energy. And from there you go on to your explorations and your wars. So when we go out to war, say the Hasidim, but it's most fundamental, really what are all these journeys about, all these wars about? It's about the war against our Yetzer Hara, against our evil inclination or our base inclination. The endless battles in our lives to try and make repairs and go beyond the limitations that each one of us are born with in heart and mind and being. And to wage these battles, according to the Hasidic teachings, is the very reason that we are all alive. We come into the world of certain parts of us that need a repair, and we go through all these experiences to find that tikkun. This is why we are alive, and given the life circumstances that we are given. There's a beautiful midrash that before each one of us is alive, angels take the soul that's about to come into this world and show them, this is where you'll be born, these are your parents, this is a map for your life, so to speak. And the rest is up to us. So what's important in our lives as we go through when we go out past those boundaries, whether real or metaphorical, is to keep our eyes open as best as possible and to live by our highest aspirations. And even when those wars bring out what is most tender and vulnerable within our being. So there's a whole section of the parsha that we read this morning. So how do you keep your camp in order when you go out to war, to keep the divine, to keep your highest aspirations in your midst? And so for the Torah, and their wars were often literal. For them, it was very physical ideas. What you do to keep your camp holy, as we read, well, when you go to the bathroom, cover it up, put in a hole and cover it up, because you want your camp to be pure, to not have anything unseemingly in it. And for us, when we go to war, even in the difficult circumstances, you have to keep your inner camp clean. You try to keep a lid on all the difficult feelings of vengeance or anger or jealousy, despair that take over our hearts and minds. And you do your best to live with your highest aspirations and ideals. So I was thinking about different homes. My last week before I was leaving Israel to go to rabbinical school in Los Angeles, I happened to have an interfaith meet. It was in Bethlehem, and it was in the West Bank. And it was a very unsuccessful interfaith meeting. But I remember at the end of the whole Shabbat, looking over the valleys around Bethlehem, and suddenly just having this feeling that part of my being, the part of me that's Jewish and part of the Jewish people, this is the home of my soul. This is the home of this is where I come from, the hills where King David and all the Bible happened. It was a beautiful moment before going away into a whole new journey. And sometimes our homes are collective homes, not just our individual ones. And in our parsha in the last, with all these laws about going to war as a collective, a lot of them are about not giving in to the inevitable excesses that happen when what the warfare provoke in a person. So when you take a captive, there are laws to stop the worst behavior from happening. When you lay siege to a city, don't destroy the trees. And the Torah says, well, if you want God in your midst when you're going out to war, whatever that war is like, to keep all evil out, don't let anything enter into your camp. And the Midrash has this long, interesting string of verses that it brings about all those times in Jewish history when the Jewish people went out to war, when their camp wasn't as it should be. And according to the Midrash, that's why they lost, because they didn't have their ethical and spiritual and moral center. They went out to war poorly prepared, and it didn't go well. So you have to keep your camp in order. This is the Book of Kings, 1 and 2. And to the Torah, we all go out to war, as mentioned. This is part of life in this world. But then there are also times where everybody gets to come home. This is what it's about. You go out to war, you come back, and that war is physical, that war is inner, that war is for our development as human beings and as souls. And fighting these wars is our very task in this world, dealing with issues we have, repairing our souls, learning new things, getting experiences that transform who we are, overcoming our lower nature. And as the Parsha, when we go to war, we hope to go with the shofar, with the ark by our side, with the tradition, with all that is holy to each one of us, and doing our best to avoid what is unseemingly in our own camp, and hopefully bring back a little bit of new understanding. And at times the war is a deeply interior matter, and sometimes it's focused on outwardly things and physical circumstances in our world. And as a Jewish people, if we look at our history, we really rarely get to enjoy the promise of the books of prophets that prophesize that everyone will be living under his or her fig tree and experience peace. And that's because that's not what we're here for. It's not how our lives unfold in this very life, even if it's the ideal we strive for. So we go out to war, we experience a loss, a suffering, the expected, the unexpected. We confront hardship, but in the end we do come home. Perhaps in the ultimate understanding, our truest home isn't really one single person. It's not even one single place. But it's someone who I love dearly said to me this week, in the end, all of it goes, right? All of that stuff, this is the nature of life. All of it goes. And so our true home is in that place where that has no beginning or end, and that place we say is inside every one of us, and it can be anywhere. As my father said to me, in a sense, wherever God is, that is home. And this is what we say in that Psalm of Repentance every day during this period. Achad sha'alti, one thing I ask, but to dwell in the house of the Lord all the days of my life. And so where do you find that house? As the story of the Kotzker Rabbi, who asked his disciples, well, where is God? And each one was smarter than the other and said, well, in his place, or in his honor, or in wherever, in the upper skies. And he says, no, God is wherever you let him or her in. Shabbat Shalom.